What's up, y'all? We're here for our weekly energy oracle forecast. I'm all nasty. I've been out in the rain. I was out jogging today and it started storming, but it was so refreshing and nice that I just continued on and went out for a walk and stuff, and it just kind of rained on and off all afternoon. So I've been rained on, sweaty. So I'm gross, but I'm going to take a shower after this and then settle in and enjoy some din-dins. Had a nice productive day. I didn't go to work, but I finished fixing all my jewelry that I'd had set aside. So I've been trying to knock out some of these little to-do lists that add up over time and kind of weigh down your energy. And so in Kabbalah, those are called empty vessels. When we set intentions that we don't follow through with. And so that can be any number of things, but for me, I've always been bad about having unfinished projects. And so those are empty vessels, and those empty vessels, they attract chaos. And, I think they slow us down and act as friction while we're trying to achieve other things. And so I've just been really wanting to get around to tying up all those kinds of little loose ends. And we tell ourselves, oh, we'll never get it all done. There's always going to be something else. But I feel like I can get all the stale things off the plate. And so it's been something that I've been working on the last few weeks before taking on a big new project. Because our cards recently have suggested that we be working steadily towards something, but this is not quite the moment to launch. And so tying up loose ends. And I see that now because when I took a little step back, I realized that July and August are, Kabbalistically speaking, one of the couple of times a year that are related to the dark night of the soul. They bring out the most negative parts of the ego. And so Cancer season, it brings out our emotional sensitivity and our our kind of tendency to be reactive emotionally. Leo kind of brings out the ego, the grandiosity. So these weeks of summer tend to be a little bit challenging in ways. When you look at the Hebrew calendar, there's about 3 days a year that aren't extremely challenging, taking us through trials and tribulations. But yeah, so it seems like, okay, that makes sense to get one's ducks in a row before you just launch. And it makes sense too, because I thought, well, then I can have a content plan and do it intentionally and follow all of the guidance that I've gotten so far about social media rather than jumping in willy-nilly in a hurry. So I share that with you because I know that a lot of us are creatives and we have things that we do. And so I know for me, whenever I'm talking with my other creative friends and they kind of talk about their process, there's always nice, helpful insight that I take from that as well. All right. Let's take a look at the energy of the week to come and see what kind of spiritual weather we will be living in. I'm hopeful because my weekly personal reading was good and I love this. We have beginning. Yay. So we may feel that we are having growing excitement, that something is coming through, that something we're in the early stages of something, or something is, we're getting ready to begin something. We have been leading up to beginning a new chapter on a new timeline, launching this new higher self that can more fully and completely align with the trajectory of our higher destiny. Right. And I think it's not just a one and done, but it's the kind of physical and spiritual and energetic discipline, almost like a martial art or yoga, of a posture that we have to be in to hit that mark. like, I don't know. I was never an ancient explorer or a pioneer. So I never really had to like go through the wilderness with a map. I mean, I might have been in a past life, but I don't have a lot of memories, past life memories involving like pioneering through vast distances using a compass and a map. So I'm not sure if I did ever, but I'm thinking about that. And you know, you would have to be making sure every day that you were in the right degree, in the right direction, in the right angle. Otherwise, if you like, you'd walk miles in the wrong direction if you were like facing the wrong degree, right? If you didn't have a path to follow. So it might be a minor adjustment that you make, but over the course of a long distance, that can add up to a huge difference of where you end up, right? So too is our vibrational posturing, the way that we aim ourselves, the way that we, set our trajectory is incrementally, achieved through our setting our intention, setting our focus, setting our direction, setting our spiritual posture every day, and then checking in throughout the day. So we're preparing to set out on this, new trajectory, a new direction. So we want to set ourselves up for the best beginning that we can. So if you're going to, like, say, start a new brand or a new venture, make sure you get all your ducks in a row. Don't cut any corners. Do the research. If you are, like, making a financial plan for yourself, right now would be a good time to think about, planning and setting up your systems so that you can start contributing to that. A lot of times what keeps us from getting started is the overwhelm of not knowing what steps to take. And so a lot of the time, the way to alleviate that overwhelm that blocks us is just to start taking sound, reasonable, informed action steps and completing those. And so it alleviates the overwhelm. So we, sorry, I had a notification on my phone that threw me off. So the small actions that we take are going to set us on that trajectory, and making sure that we do those in completion. And that way we're like kind of bypassing procrastination because we're just so overwhelmed we don't know where to begin, right? Just start doing small steps. Get your research out of the way. Don't rush in out of impatience. Take your time and take the steps with intention. Okay. It's just circling back to the challenging weeks of the year. I mean, there's always another retrograde around the corner. There's always another set of weeks that aren't the most ideal, but we can't, put our lives on pause forever, right? We just have to be aware and navigate the best we can within those times. And, if we have overwhelming messages and inclinations that we should hold and wait, then maybe we should. But by, taking little steps, they add up and we don't get frozen and we don't get stuck. But we can take spiritually inspired and spiritually guided steps. And that's what I've been doing with the second channel that I've been working on. I've just been taking it, I've been continuing to put it in my thoughts and work on it in the background. But I've been like praying that God will give me inspiration and guidance and that I can channel that through, and not be overwhelmed with everything that it seems like you have to do to begin something. It's like if I can just take it a little bit at a time. So God's been giving me like inspiration about ideas and content and planning like that, but also just inclinations as to little steps that I can take and complete and get out of the way. Whereas in the past, I might come up with all these steps that I need to take and ruminate and circle around on what I need to do first forever, right? Sometimes it's just good to just get something out of the way. Oh my gosh, we have sorrow showing up this week. So it's interesting too, because where am I holding the deck upside down? Some of the cards, okay, so they're mixed. Okay, so last week in my personal reading, I had sorrow upside down. And I don't think it came out for our general readings with the collective for us. But the experience that I had with my sorrow and my head hanging upside down last week was like a purging sort of sorrow, where I was still able to feel and bear witness and grieve where I needed to grieve and feel the sorrow. Because like sometimes it's not even, necessarily my own sorrow recently that I'm feeling. Sometimes it's just this collective sorrow when I'm looking on into the world, and I don't want to turn away from it. I think that it's important to bear witness and, to turn away from these moments in human history and human civilization. It's like we should be here to bear witness. It's tempting to want to hide away and protect yourself and whatever, but it's also not why we came here. I don't think. I think that God wants us to be watching out and paying attention, not getting obsessed and completely caught up or whatever, but like definitely like not hiding away, underground until it's all over and then I'll come out. I think that we need to bear witness and look and see what's going on. One of the things that was most compelling to me in this season of The Chosen was watching Jesus's stages of grief in leading up to his final week of freedom and the climactic, the climax of his ministry all coming together during Passover, and him still trying to explain to the disciples what's going down, and they're still not getting it. And he's just like grieved, and he knows what's coming, and he knows the gravity of it all. And the closer it gets to that moment of his arrest, like the more he is just almost just struck down, almost like in weakness, with the amount of grief and sorrow that washes over him in waves. It hits so hard. But having said that, I think that as we might have waves of sorrow coming through this week, I think as we allow ourselves to surrender to the moments and let them pass through, we become less afraid of sorrow. And it has less control over us, and it has less bondage over us, right? And so many times we avoid sorrow, we avoid crying, we avoid grieving, and that actually prevents the healing from happening. And so, the change that we're seeing, these are labor pains of the ending of one old way of consciousness and life and the beginning of a new phase. But the disruption in the middle is painful, and it's apocalyptic to watch and to bear witness. So yeah, these times, I don't wish them on anyone, but I know that we all as souls chose to be here on earth during this time, and we have a part to play. And even if that is, and most of the rabbis and spiritual thought leaders and teachers that I follow emphasize that our purpose as souls is not to go out and change everybody else and awaken everybody else, which we share. We share the light with others, but ultimately the greatest change starts with the change that we go through within our own transformation, putting our own flesh down on the cross and giving up our own, lower fleshly ways, and serving with humility and wanting to be a vessel of sharing, of giving. And so that does come, compassion does come with sorrow. But in order to maintain that humanity and that heart and that compassion and that empathy, it's like we have to be able to build our threshold to sorrow. And I think that's why a lot of people are losing their humanity and they're numbing out and they're becoming avoidant and they are becoming more and more slipping into tendencies of cruelty because they have no threshold for compassion. And so they have no threshold for empathy because it hurts. And it's not even your wound that hurts when you have compassion and empathy. You're allowing yourself, you're volunteering to feel the pain of another. So this sorrow this week, I feel like if it was right side up, it would be heavy hanging over our head, but I feel like we're releasing this sorrow. It feels like we're surrendering, we're letting go, we're allowing it to be cleansed and pass through. And so that we're becoming more resilient. It's like the things that we're seeing and playing out in the world, it's not like there's going to be less reason for sorrow and less cause for sorrow, but we'll be more resilient in the face of it. We'll be more, we'll have more strength. And what that means is that it doesn't mean that we're going to be number and it's not going to affect us as much, but we're going to be able to bounce back. We're going to be able to carry on with our day. We're going to be able to pull ourselves together and still have the energy to bring effective, positive change into the world. Remember, and you can go to my channel page where you can see the posts, go to that tab, and I posted the like a scale of emotions, a vibrational scale of emotions. And I think I pulled it off of maybe Google Images. It might have been Gabrielle Bernstein that used it to make a point. I can't remember, but that nevertheless, here's this piece of resource that I can't fully give you a detailed bibliography for, but use it. It will show you all the negative, most disempowering emotions at the bottom of the scale, and it will gradually climb up to the most empowering and positive emotions. And so you can see when you look at the nuances in between, emotions that are easier to reach for than making leaps and bounds from hopelessness at the bottom to hopeful and in gratitude. So, you can see the steps on the ladder rung by rung. Okay, can I reach for the next best thought? Can I reach for the next best feeling, rather than thinking that you have to completely turn it around all at once? But having said that, looking at that graph or that graphic made me realize that, when you look at the difficult news in the world, we are the human response to that puts us almost in the feelings of hopelessness and despair. But we're not effective that way. We're not powerful that way. So we need to maintain our hopefulness and our inner peace and our gratitude and our light. All right, what else do we need to know for the week? Ooh, the ego is coming out too. So, and it's reversed. So I think our ego, the plaguing thoughts, the anxiety, the limiting beliefs, the ego's lower flesh consciousness that ends up sabotaging us, holding us back, causing us to do negative actions and be reactive. Like, we're going to see it come out. And I think that because we're looking at all of this sorrow, all of this ego this week, it's like, this is that week where we can look at it and pause and not go through those same patterns again, but to be a witness, bear witness to our feelings and our thoughts. And instead of getting dragged into the drama, we are like taking a step back and detaching and observing those thoughts. And then we're practicing enough self-control to say, okay, what's getting in my mind right now? Is this the creator having an influence over me, or is this the opponent having an influence over me? And I can choose what to feed right now, right? And so this is how we maintain that connection to the creator. One of my rabbis that I study under, Michael Berg from the Kabbalah Center, he was just talking about in a video that I was just watching how we should really only have one fear. And if we have this one fear, then that one fear protects us from everything else. And that one fear is disconnecting from the creator, doing negative reactive behavior, having negative reactive consciousness, that cuts us off from that connection to source, right? And so when we are connected to the creator, when we are connected to source, when we feel a sense of peace and trust and fulfillment, then we're in the protection of the creator. We're in the flow. We're in that state of being blessed and provided for and protected and under the care of the Holy Spirit. But when we are negative and angry and hostile and even despairing and sad and reactive and judgmental and all of those low vibrational things, we cut ourselves off from that connection to the creator, and we expose ourselves to the world of cause and effect and affect consciousness. And so we expose ourselves to chaos and negativity. And so the grace is that in any given moment we can realize and become aware and reconnect to the creator. But also in our foolishness and our humanness, in any given second we can get provoked, triggered, reactive, and then disconnect again. So learning how to maintain that connection is our discipline and our discipleship, right? That's what Jesus was unpacking and teaching for us, teaching us how to have the attitudes and the mindsets and adopt the practices that help us stay close to the creator, being a mirror image of the creator and modeling that behavior, being that prototype of that divine human being rather than the lower animalistic human being. So that is the week ahead, and I think the more that we restrict and resist the temptations of our ego, our ego's agenda, our ego's storylines and plot lines, and get us into this sad state, the more we resist that and restrict that, I think the more it will open us up to a flow of inner peace and fulfillment and abundance, because we are breaking the shackles that keep us in bondage, right? The more that we expose the trap, the less effective the trap is. When we've already figured out the trick, it's not a trick anymore. It's not effective, right? So too is the opponent. With the tricks of the opponent, when we see the tricks, they're not effective anymore, right? And so these are the things that we're looking out for this week in order to start our new beginning with a stronger connection than ever to the light of the creator, right? And we can proactively build that each day with connecting to Holy Scripture through the Torah or the New Testament, or I like, even to read some of the Gnostic Gospels, but holy sacred wisdom, connecting to that, having time for prayer and meditation and that kind of connection, and keeping that connection going through the day. Maintaining the awareness that God is with you throughout the day, and that even challenges can reveal the light if we navigate that challenge skillfully enough and with enough self-control not to be thrown into ego reactions, negative self-defense mechanisms, things of that nature, self-sabotaging behavior, right? So just practicing the self-discipline and self-mastery that helps us overcome those tendencies and patterns. All right, you guys, and that really connects us to the flow of blessing and abundance and good fortune and preparedness meets good timing kind of thing. And that is all for tonight. I'm gonna go out and, oh, I don't have to water my garden because it rained. That's right, because I took a shower in the rain. I had a rain baptism. I don't know if I talked about this earlier, but I love in the summertime to go to natural springs and water holes and like waterfalls and things, and submerge myself in the water and do like a baptism once a year. And I haven't got to do it this year yet, but when I went out on my run earlier and I was running in the rain, it was so refreshing. But I always feel like that's such a nice spiritual cleansing. It's like a little soul rinse, but it does feel like it does clean your aura. All right, y'all, that's all for tonight. I'll see you tomorrow for our weekly anchor message, where we will be getting our spiritual assignments for the week. Till then, peace. Ciao.